we talk about Star Wars Episode 3 again. My experience using Book Reverb, and this week's showcase, Stalkers. All this and more on this week's Indie Author Showcase. Welcome to the Indie Author Showcase, the podcast by indie authors for indie authors. I am your host, multi-award-winning author Chad Robert Morgan, and let's get started. First thing I want to comment on is a joke my daughter made, because I was talking about that the awards I've racked up, and she goes, "How's band practice?" Band practice? I haven't been in band since I was in high school. That was like 40 years ago. What are you talking about? Well, you're really good at tooting your own horn. So kudos for the joke, but as an author, I feel like you got to get your name out there, right? It's kind of like what was it? Not Ben Affleck. Alec Baldwin in Glengarry Glen Ross. You know, always be closing. You know, that kind of thing. You gotta get your name out there, and I mean, I guess there's a threshold where it just gets annoying, right? So I guess as long as you don't cross that, but I mean, you always got to be plugging away. You always got to be getting your name out there, because the thing I learned the hard way, and in fact, the reason I started this podcast is, if you're an indie author out there and you're selling your books, you're not the only one. There are thousands of us. One of us, right? So you always got to be plugging away. Get your name out there. Post on social media. Make your presence known. Make sure people know, hey, yeah, and I've also written some books. So, so don't be ashamed. Get your name out there. The second thing I wanted to talk about is, I've gotten a few comments about, well, let me back up a minute and talk about one thing. I've mentioned this I don't know how many times, and I still get the comment where the little shorts go up on YouTube and TikTok and etc., and they're little snippets of this show, and sometimes they're taken kind of out of context. What happens is because I've mentioned before, I'm busy, right? I mean, I'm trying to write books, I'm trying to do conventions, I got a day job, I got a side hustle. I'm doing like a lot, right? So one of the things that I do to extend the presence of the show is I run the show through a program called Opus Clip. And what that does is it cuts up and formats the show for TikTok, Instagram, and the like, right? Just these little shorts, YouTube shorts, that kind of thing. And normally it does a very good job, but sometimes it screws up, right? Sometimes it'll screw up with the spelling of names. I've had that happen where I've had an author go, "Oh, that's not how my name is spelled," and I have to go in and fix things and pull the short and re-upload it and everything like that. And sometimes it will cut the clip in such a way that out of context, it doesn't make a lot of sense. Now, if I had time, I would go through each clip, make sure they actually made sense, make sure they were good, tell them, but I don't got time for that. So I just upload everything, right? And every once in a while you get a clunker, right? You get a short that out of context doesn't make a lot of sense. And there was one like that. It's like, what the hell are you talking about? And I looked at the clip, and again, the clip was just, it was talking about the main characters in the last book we showcased, but out of context, you wouldn't know that. I'm just talking about three random guys, right? So he's like, what the hell are you talking about? Okay, I get it. It makes sense. But again, this is a sneak peek of the larger podcast. So when you see these clips, or, if you have a question, go watch the podcast, right? That's what these clips are supposed to do. So they don't always work as intended, and that's fair. It's a fair comment. But yeah, just putting that out there. And of course, whenever I do these little explanations about what Opus Clips does, none of them ever winds up in a clip. So I don't know how much this description helps. So yeah. Last thing I want to talk about till we get to the showcase. I do want to keep this short because last week I went on forever, and I don't want to do that again today. I got some other things going on. We'll talk about it more next week, hopefully. I just want to kind of get this out so I can keep on schedule. But I want to talk about some of the comments. I mean, it's not a lot, but I've gotten a few comments on what I was discussing about with C3PO's mind wipe in episode 3. And I guess I shouldn't be surprised I gotten some comments. I probably would have gotten less comments if I was critiquing the writing in the Bible. But there was at least one hardcore fan that was like, well, what do you expect? They were written before this. And I'm like, so I was thinking about this, right? In the last podcast, I had an idea of where we could pull from episode 9 and put that in episode 3, and that would actually maybe balance things out a little bit. But of course, that in itself is cheating because episode 9 came years later. That's like, future vision there. It's easy to retcon the entire trilogy once the entire trilogy is actually written. When you're doing it at the time and you don't know what's going to happen in the future, it's a little bit harder. So I started rethinking that problem. So the writers wrote themselves into a bit of a corner in the prequel trilogy by introducing R2-D2 and C3PO, because not only did they know Anakin before he was Darth Vader, but C3PO was actually built by Anakin, and at no point in the original series is this actually mentioned. Of course it wasn't mentioned because it didn't happen yet, right? They were written out of order. What happened with the writers is they basically got to the end of episode 3 and they have this throwaway line with Bail Organa go, oh, and have that droid's memory wiped. What? And that's it. Continuity resolved. Which it's such an odd, weird line. Okay, so let me. So first, we've diagnosed a problem. Okay, R2-D2 and C3PO, mainly C3PO. You'll notice he didn't have R2's mind wipe, which makes that line even weirder. He goes to 3PO and say, have this droid's mind wipe. R2 was left alone in that scene. Nobody mentions this, right? And everybody kind of feels like, yeah, R2 probably kind of knew, right? He always seemed to have his own mind of everything. So first question, why was R2-D2 and C3PO in the prequel trilogy anyway? George Lucas always felt that R2 and 3PO were the POV characters of Star Wars. Think about back to the original Star Wars, right? You see the Tantum 5 coming in, big old huge Star Destroyer comes in, it's shooting at it. We cut to the interior, and who are the first characters we see? R2-D2 and C3PO. Go to Return of the Jedi. Opening shot, we're in the desert, Jabba's palace is in the background. Who's walking towards Jabba's palace? R2-D2 and C3PO. Empire Strikes Back, the party gets split, right? One group goes to Bespin, the other group goes to Dagobah. What happens to the droids? They get split because one POV character is with one group and the other POV character is in the other group. Does it work consistently? I would say no. I mean, there's obviously in Jedi where Luke faces Darth Vader alone. Neither of the droids are with him. So the whole, whether or not it worked or not is a different discussion. Okay, point is that was always George Lucas's intention. Now, George Lucas had no involvement in the sequel trilogy, the Force Awakens, Last Jedi, Rise of Skywalker. He had no input in that. But he did, like, create the prequel trilogies. Like the first 6 movies are his baby, right? And then Disney took over for the last 3. So in his mind, more Star Wars meant you had to have R2D2 and C3PO. They introduced R2D2 as they escape Naboo. I'm fine with that. That works. Once you have C3PO made by Anakin, you're like, what? Right? And that's a little too much of a coincidence, ain't it? That don't sound right. But we're already seeing us getting into a corner the minute C3PO was introduced. And again, we don't have this problem with R2 because R2 has always had his own kind of mindset, his own kind of will. We can, like you see that in the original Star Wars. He goes off on his own to find Obi-Wan Kenobi. He's very independent. So you can imagine, it's never explicitly said in the movies, but you can imagine that R2D2 remembers all of this. And he's playing his part, right? He knows what's happening. C-3PO, you can't rely on, right? He's a little coward. He's a little chicken shit. And he's a blabbermouth. So, yeah, you would expect him, if he knew anything, to run his mouth. R2 can keep a secret. C-3PO can't. So, what do? You wipe his mind. Again, droids do this in Star Wars, right? They have their minds wiped. They mentioned having R2's mind wiped in episode 1, and he's like, nah, I like him the way he is. Or not episode 1, the original Star Wars, I should say. So, if the rules allow this, why does it feel like such a cheat? Well, first of all, again, as I mentioned, he calls out C-3PO, but doesn't call out R2-D2. That is a weird exception. Like, why would he have C-3PO's mind wiped and ignore R2? Makes no sense. It's almost as if the original line was, oh, that's right, we have a plot hole. Have the droid's mind wiped. That's the way it felt. So we've diagnosed the problem, right? Writers wrote this into a corner. We have a character who survives from episode 3 to episode 4, but that character, if he has all that knowledge, would be it'd be a consistency error, continuity error. So we need to fix it. And they just hit the big red easy button and said mind wipe. Okay. So here's the challenge. How can we do that and make it feel earned? Make it feel less like a cheat. So we're not actually changing anything. Okay, just to be clear, this is the rules of the game. I want you to participate. This is the rules of the game. We're not changing anything. The events of episode 3 pretty much happen the way they are, and episode 4 happened the way they are. And C-3PO still has his mind wiped. But how can we rewrite how that happened and make it feel earned, make it feel less like a cheat? So here's my idea, and you tell me if you think it works or not. And there's 2 variations of this, so we can pick and choose. But both variations start out the same way. We have the shuttle landing at Mustafar. We have Padme coming out. We have Anakin getting pissed off and basically force choking her. What if we had C-3PO walking out with her? That would make sense. C-3PO was basically her protocol droid at that point. He was shadowing her. R2 would go with Anakin, and C-3PO would go with Padme. So he's force choking her, pregnant Padme. C-3PO goes, oh no, Master Anakin, please stop. Anakin gets pissed off. He force throws him against a rock, and he falls over, and his right leg dips into the molten lava and starts melting, and he's shorting out and everything like that. The rest of the movie happens more or less as it happens. Big fight at Mustafar. Obi-Wan takes Padme into the ship. R2 gets the damaged C-3PO, pulls him into the ship. As they're trying to fix him up, his right leg is melted off. Like, we got this silver one. It's the best we can do for now. and they attach a silver one. That would explain why in episode 4 in the original Star Wars, his right lower leg was silver. Most people don't know that because the toys had them as all gold. And when he's on Tatooine, his silver leg kept reflecting the desert sand, so it kind of looked gold, but that lower leg was silver. Most people don't know that. They don't, that's one of those little details that kind of gets glossed over, almost like a Mandela effect. So then that explains where he gets the silver leg. And then as they're trying to put him back together, his memory circuits are damaged, and he's like, "Oh, hello, who are you? Who am I? I do not remember," that kind of thing. And see, and R2D2 actually has this very, very sad, oh, right, he's bummed, right? Because his friend got his mind wiped and he's got to start all over again, that relationship. Or, alternatively, as they're repairing him, maybe he doesn't have his memory circuits damaged, but he is kind of going schizo because he can't wrap his mind around the fact that Anakin did that. Like, no, Master Anakin cannot. Oh, damaged. No, cannot. And the only way to get him stabilized is to erase any knowledge of Anakin because of the conflict, right? There was a similar storyline in Star Trek where the Doctor had to make a decision, and he couldn't rectify the decision. It was causing him to malfunction. So they tried to solve it by erasing the events. And eventually the Doctor realized what had happened and started malfunctioning again. And they had to, like, okay, we're just going to have to go through this the old-fashioned way and have you deal with this shit. So it'd be a similar kind of thing, right? Where his damaged circuits cannot rectify what Anakin has done. He feels betrayed, and the only way to get his malfunctioning mind under control is to do at least a partial memory wipe where they take away all knowledge of Anakin. Would that be any better? Now, I think it's better than a little throwaway line, right? It at least puts a big lantern on the fact that we are fixing the continuity. R2D2 still knows everything. But does that solve the point of C-3PO's agency, right? Does it feel earned if C-3PO was trying to protect Padme and was damaged? Let me know what you think. Better yet, let me know what you would do to fix the episode 3 cheat, the memory wipe cheat. How would you fix it? The whole memory wipe thing is like I said, it's not that it's not allowed. It feels like a big red easy button, and they just hit it. They actually did the same thing at the end of Acolyte, if you watch that. I actually like the Acolyte. I think it is way underrated. There were, however, a couple of parts in the Acolyte that really kind of twerked me off. Everybody gets off on the cortosis. I didn't mind the cortosis. The first video game I worked on was Obi-Wan for the Xbox. Well, it's the first real video game. The first video game I did was actually called Jar Jar's Journey. It was an animated storybook. Misa Jar Jar Binks, Misa so happy you come to play with me today. The first real video game I worked on was Obi-Wan. And it was supposed to be a prequel to episode 1, so it was a prequel to a prequel that focused around Obi-Wan, because let's face it, Obi-Wan didn't get a lot of screen time in that first episode. We wanted a lot of lightsaber fights, but the problem is that George was really on this, no, there's only 2. And it's like, well, we can't fight Darth Maul, like, all day. I mean, what's he going to do? Just keep escaping, and then, like, when you face him in the desert, or like, oh, yeah, that guy looks familiar. He was wearing a mask earlier, I guess. I don't know. That would have made sense. So, I don't know if they invented it for the game, or if they dug into the lore and found it for the game. But they came up with cortosis, which was a material that was resistant to lightsabers. Now, in our game, the lightsabers didn't short out, but it was our excuse of why, basically a stormtrooper could take 3 hits from a lightsaber, right? Because his armor was made out of cortosis. So I already knew about cortosis when I watched The Acolyte, right? Anybody who played that video game knew what cortosis was. So that didn't, some people got mad at the cortosis. I was already on board with that. It was in the video game I worked on. It was part of canon as far as I was concerned. But the 2 parts about Acolyte that really pissed me off. One was, and they both happened in the last episode, is when Sun is chasing after May in the ships, and that little beaver dude, the little scout, like starts sabotaging the ship, and I'm like, why was he doing this? Like, that seemed really out of place, right? And then the last thing was Osha actually kills Sun and with his lightsaber, which basically poisons the kyber crystal and turns it red. That's why the Sith, their lightsabers were always red, supposedly. And this too is supposedly canon. It was talked about in the comic books. If you haven't read the comics, you wouldn't know this. I haven't read the comics, but I know it because there's plenty of YouTubers that have read the comics and they explained it to me. So I basically get the cliff notes. So the whole turning a lightsaber color through an act of evil kind of thing was kind of canon. And it's also supposedly how Ahsoka's lightsabers were white, because she took some red kyber crystals and healed them. So this is part of canon, right? So that part didn't upset me. But then you have May and Osha basically switching places. And what does the dude from The Good Place do? It's like, well, I'll use the Force and wipe your memory. I'm like, oh, don't do another memory wipe. No! Again, it just feels, whenever they do that, it just feels like writers wrote themselves into a corner and they're hitting the, in case of emergency, break glass and wipe memory. So yeah, those are the 2 parts of Acolyte. The rest of Acolyte I thought was really, really good. Right? I dug it. Those 2, I would have wanted to do something, but maybe you should just killed May and be done with it, instead of wiping her memory. But anyway, how would you fix episode 3? I want to hear your ideas for how C-3PO could still not know who Anakin was, but make it feel earned. Make it feel less of a cheat. How can he accomplish the same goal, but better? So give me your ideas. I want to see them in the comments. I want to see your ideas for rewriting that. I think that'd be an interesting exercise. So hopefully this is the last time I talk about Star Wars for a while. I love me some Star Wars, but this is not. This is turning into a Star Wars channel. We need to get off that. So let's talk a little bit about Book Reverb. Now, I've been using Book Reverb for a couple weeks. I've been checking it out for, you guys. What they have done recently in the past few weeks is they added audiobooks. So I uploaded all my audiobooks except The Last Rite. It's technically up there, but there's no promo codes for it because I burned all those up long ago. So, The Last Ride is the only one that's not getting any reviews on this site. There's no promo codes. So what I've done is for all the other ones, uploaded all the remaining promo codes from ACX. A lot of UK ones if you're in the UK. And then I would, every so often, upload some money. People will for $10 get one of my promo, and I think it's based on length of book, because I got one audiobook that's like $8.50. because it's the shortest of the group, right? But average is 10. So for $10, they're going to grab the audiobook, listen to it, and either leave a review or like a book report, right? Basically proof that they read it. So the good news is I've been getting a lot of 5-star reviews off of this thing. I will occasionally get a 4-star. There was one I got for Fear that was really strange because it was blank. Like, it wasn't 0 stars. It was blank. There was no comment, no nothing. It looked like it was an error. So I don't know what's going on with that. So, but it did drag my average down. But that's fine because it's high enough I can take the hit. Like for Short Bites, I got a 4 out of 5 one time, right? So you're not guaranteed. It's not like a guaranteed thing, right? For the written books, which just nobody bothers with anymore, they go straight to the audiobooks, probably because they get more money out of the audiobooks. I did get, like, the Baby Eater got a 3. It also got a 4, So there are definitely a few people on there giving honest reviews. But here's what seems to be happening. So I will put up like $100. Almost instantly, it's gone. And so are 10 of my promo codes. Okay, that's fine. I want people to listen to the book. I want to leave a review, and I mean, that's the point, right? The fact that it happens instantly, it's like throwing red meat with a bunch of piranhas. It's gone, right? So I did this last week. I uploaded $100. 10 promo codes were gone. By within about a day or two, I had 5-star reviews, like overnight. In fact, I had one. I was like, I don't think he had time to listen to the audiobook and post this review. Now, time of this recording, out of those 10, 2 people are still listening to it. 2 people are still listening to their copy of the audiobook. So the vibe I'm getting, and this is just, again, I have no proof. I can't see what they're doing. I can't talk to these people, but just kind of a vibe I'm getting is half of these people are just 5-star review, give me my money. The other half are taking it a little bit more seriously. They're actually listening to the book and leaving a review before they cash in. And then out of that half of those people are really taking it seriously. They're really taking their time to listen to the book, leaving very detailed reviews, some of them, and really getting into the spirit of what this is supposed to be for. That's my impression. Okay, this is not fact. This is not, I don't have any inside information. This is just from what I am seeing when I put money into the account and I see an immediate review like the next day. That just seems a little quick. If I see, a review before the day is out, I mean, it takes at least about 8 hours to go through one of these audiobooks. Depends on which one it is. Like Intergalactic Space Force is a 10.5-hour book. And if I'm getting a review within 8 hours, the dude's skipping chapters or something, right? It's just, some of the reviews I get seem a little quick. So I'm a little skeptical. But again, and I'll have some people that have that review or that audiobook for like a week before I see a review. So at least some of them are taking it seriously. At least some of them are really listening to your book and providing honest to God reviews. So take that with a grain of salt. Take it for what it is. It's just an end user trying out the service and giving the feedback. This is what I am seeing. This is the impression I am getting. Whether or not it's true or not is another story. Maybe every single one of these people are listening to the audiobook and they are just, writing some really generic reviews. I don't know. Some of them are very, very detailed. So I have this one review here for The Baby Eater. It is 5 paragraphs long. So I do feel there are at least a few people using the service that are really trying to do it with the spirit it's intended and not just rubber stamp a 5-star review. So if you want to try it for yourself, you can use promo code Spectral and get some free credits, get your first review in, and see how you like it. I think it's great for audiobooks. I did have some concerns with the print books, which ironically I do have one current reader. One person is actually reading the book. My issue with the print books is that you're uploading a PDF, so they're reading a copy of it and leaving a review for Amazon, so they're not actually purchasing it, so it counts as an unverified review, which some people have said, well, if you get too many of those, Amazon gets suspicious. So a little wary about that, but with the audiobooks, they're just using ACX promo codes, so I can't see how that would bite you in the butt with the audiobooks. The print books, okay, I can kind of see maybe, but the audiobooks, that's what those promo codes are for. Is to get buzz. So give it a shot. Let me know what you think. If you've had a negative experience with Book Reverb, let me know. If you've tried it and you really like Book Reverb, let me know. I would love to hear some feedback. So let's go on to this week's review. This has been on my TBR list for years. I finally got around to reading it, and I'm glad I did, because this was a good one. This is Stalkers by Michael Raff. Plot of the book is pretty simple. We have a family of 3 moved into a new home in kind of rural Georgia. They see something going on in the neighbor's house, like he's getting the telescope to look to see what's going on. Next thing you know, a bunch of cultists are raiding his house, and his daughter goes missing. So the cops come in, and then the FBI comes in, because they're all trying to get this cult. Okay, so just a blurb on the back of the book. On the night of June 30th, 1995, in Springdale, Georgia, David Conway relaxes on the balcony of his new home. To his delight, when the night is alive with thunder and lightning, when he spots 4 cloaked figures bearing something in his neighbor's backyard, he takes a closer look through his telescope. To his horror, he discovers they're bearing the dismembered body of his neighbor. Before he can phone for help, they spot him, and so begins a long, agonizing night of mortal combat. It's a war between an innocent man and a band of rampaging Satanists, a horrendous age-old battle of good versus evil. David Conway, amateur astronomer, chess enthusiast, and family man, finds himself not only fighting for his life, but for the lives of his wife and 5-year-old daughter. As the hours crawl by and the carnage continues, no one, not the sheriff, his deputies, or even the FBI, can protect them. So overall, I say it was really a good book. I was digging it. The only problem I had was towards the end. They were basically cornered by the main Satanist's first lieutenant, and then for some reason the main guy is impersonating one of the neighbors and takes her out, and I'm like, what was the point? You had them, you could have just killed them. The main character gets hip to it right before he's going to get shot in the back, so he manages to save himself and his wife. But I don't know. It felt like I missed something there, because it seemed unnecessary for the main bad guy to take this action, because they already had the upper hand. So why save them just to kill them later? Didn't quite catch that turn. But the rest of it's I thought was really, really solid. Um, it's definitely on the violent, gory side, right? You have a big chunk of it is this crazy woman trying to or planning to kill the young girl, only to find out that she has escaped and now she's hunting for him. Um, so yeah, whenever you put little kids in danger, that kind of ups the adrenaline level a bit. But yeah, no, I would say it is a good rock solid horror story. It is um, kind of a very what was the one with the home invasion? Um, why are you doing this? Because you were home. It's really got that kind of vibe where it's just really sick people doing sick things, which is usually not my kind of horror, right? I mean, I'm more into evil spirits and monsters and that kind of thing. People being cruel to other people is just the news. Um, but with that said, I think if this is the style of book you're looking for, this is very well written. It's very fast paced. The characters felt um, three dimensional and authentic, and a lot of blood is spilled in the book. So if you're into that kind of thing, yeah, this is a good old fashioned horror story. And there is, I don't want to spoil the ending, but there is a little bit of a twist in the end where it's like it might not be just cut and dry. It might be something a little bit more going on than just crazy person. So I'll leave it at that. So check out Stalkers by Michael Raff. And 2 weeks, I'm going to be at Monsterpalooza. Visit me there at Pasadena. And until then, keep on reading.